For nearly half a century, the Mongols had been the greatest terror the world had ever known. They were not just an army, they were a force of nature. From the frozen steppes of Central Asia to the heart of China, from Persia to Eastern Europe, Mongol horsemen burned cities, crushed empires, and left entire civilizations in ruins. Wherever their banners appeared, resistance collapsed. Kings fled, armies surrendered, entire populations vanished. No army had ever stopped them, no strategy had ever broken them. And then, in the year 1260, in a small valley called Ain Jalut, everything changed. This is the story of how the Mamluks, a former slave army, used deception, discipline, and perfect timing to do what no one believed was possible. They destroyed a Mongol army in open battle, not through luck, not through numbers, but through one brilliant, deadly trick. The Mongol war machine. To understand why Ain Jalut was so shocking, you must first understand who the Mongols were. The Mongol army was built on speed, discipline, and psychological terror. Every soldier was a master horseman from childhood. They could ride for days without rest, fire arrows accurately at full gallop, and coordinate massive movements across open terrain without confusion. Their tactics were simple, but terrifyingly effective. They used feigned retreats, pretending to flee only to lure enemies into pursuit before turning around and annihilating them. They surrounded armies from all sides. They used intelligence networks, spies, and scouts far ahead of their main force. Most terrifying of all was their reputation. Cities that resisted were exterminated. Cities that surrendered were spared, but enslaved. By the mid-13th century, the Mongols had already destroyed the Abbasid Caliphate. Baghdad, once the jewel of the Islamic world, was burned to the ground in 1258. Its libraries were thrown into the Tigris River, turning the water black with ink. When Baghdad fell, the world believed the Mongols were unstoppable, and the Mongols believed it too. The road to Ain Jalut. After Baghdad, Hulagu Khan, grandson of Genghis Khan, pushed westward. His goal was clear: complete domination of the Middle East. One by one, cities fell: Aleppo, Damascus, Hama. The Mongols sent messages ahead of their armies demanding surrender. The message was always the same: submit and live, resist and die. Most rulers surrendered, but there was one power that refused to kneel: the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt. Who were the Mamluks? The Mamluks were not born nobles. They were not a royal dynasty. They were former slaves. Purchased as children, trained relentlessly in warfare, loyalty, and discipline, the Mamluks became one of the most elite military forces in history. Their entire identity was built around war. They trained every day. They lived for battle. They ruled through strength. By 1260, the Mamluks controlled Egypt and parts of the Levant. Their sultan at the time was Saif ad-Din Qutuz, a man who understood one brutal truth: if the Mongols defeated Egypt, there would be nowhere left to run. The Mongol ultimatum. Hulagu sent envoys to Egypt carrying a message of absolute arrogance. It demanded unconditional surrender. It mocked the Mamluks' strength. It warned of total annihilation. Qutuz listened. Then he did something no ruler had dared to do before. He executed the Mongol envoys. Their heads were displayed on the gates of Cairo. This was an act of open defiance and a declaration of war. There would be no surrender. A window of opportunity. But something unexpected happened. In 1260, the great Khan Möngke, ruler of the Mongol Empire, died suddenly in China. Mongol tradition demanded that princes return home to elect a new great Khan. Hulagu withdrew the majority of his forces eastward, leaving behind a smaller but still formidable army in Syria under the command of Kikbuka. a hardened Mongol general and devout Nestorian Christian. Kitbuka believed the remaining Mongol forces were more than enough to crush the Mamluks. He underestimated them. Qutuz saw his chance. The march north. The Mamluk army marched north from Egypt, passing through territory controlled by the Crusaders. Surprisingly, the Crusader states allowed them safe passage. Why? Because even the Crusaders feared the Mongols more than the Mamluks. Two enemies temporarily tolerated each other to stop a greater threat. The Mamluk army was led by Qutuz and his brilliant general Baybars, a master tactician with first-hand experience fighting Mongols. Baybars understood Mongol psychology. He understood their habits, and most importantly, he understood their weaknesses. Choosing the battlefield. The Mamluks did not meet the Mongols randomly. They chose Ain Jalut. Ain Jalut was a valley in modern-day Palestine surrounded by hills and forests, terrain that restricted Mongol mobility and neutralized their greatest advantage, open-field maneuver warfare. This was not an accident, it was a trap. The Mamluk trick. The Mongols advanced confidently into the valley. They saw what appeared to be a small Mamluk force ahead of them. Baybars was commanding the forward units. He attacked, then retreated. The Mongols smiled. This was familiar. This was their tactic. They pursued, and that was the mistake. As the Mongols chased the retreating Mamluks deeper into the valley, they crossed an invisible line. Suddenly, horns sounded. From behind the hills, the main Mamluk army emerged. The Mongols were surrounded. The hunters had become the hunted, turning Mongol tactics against them. The brilliance of the Mamluk plan was psychological. The Mongols had never faced an enemy that could match their discipline and beat them at their own game. The Mamluks did not panic. They did not break formation. They did not overextend. Heavy cavalry charged from the flanks. Archers rained arrows from concealed positions. The Mongols attempted to regroup, but the terrain worked against them. For the first time, Mongol cavalry could not maneuver freely. For the first time, Mongol confidence cracked. The death of Kitbuka. The fighting was brutal. At one point, the Mongols launched a fierce counterattack, pushing the Mamluks back. The battle hung in the balance. Then Qutuz himself removed his helmet, raised his sword, and charged forward, shouting, "Islam! Islam!" His men followed. This final push shattered Mongol resistance. Kitbuka was captured alive. He was brought before Qutuz, offered mercy if he surrendered. Kitbuka refused. He was executed on the battlefield. The Mongol army collapsed. The impossible becomes reality. For the first time in history, a Mongol field army had been decisively defeated, not through attrition, not through weather, but through strategy and courage. The myth of Mongol invincibility was shattered. News spread rapidly across the world. The Mongols could be beaten. Why Ain Jalut changed history. Ain Jalut stopped Mongol expansion into Africa. Had Egypt fallen, the Mongols could have crossed into North Africa and possibly even southern Europe from the south. The Islamic world survived. Trade routes stabilized. Power shifted. The balance of history changed in a single valley. The irony of victory. Just weeks after the battle, Sultan Qutuz was assassinated. Baybars became the new ruler of Egypt. The Mamluks would go on to rule for centuries, becoming one of the most powerful military states of the medieval world. But Ain Jalut remained their greatest achievement. The real secret. The real secret of Ain Jalut was not just a feigned retreat. It was discipline meeting discipline. It was preparation meeting arrogance. It was an army that studied its enemy and waited patiently for the perfect moment to strike. The Mongols had conquered the world by terror. The Mamluks defeated them with understanding. Final reflection. History often remembers conquerors, but sometimes the most important moments belong to those who stopped them. Ain Jalut was not just a battle, it was a message to the world. No empire is invincible. No legend is permanent. And even the greatest war machine can fall if it walks into the right trap. Subscribe to the Thought Chamber for more.